Welcome to the Change My View podcast, episode 12. We're live here with Snorlax and Mihach. Hello, Cal. How are you today?
I am very well. How are you?
Good. If you're tuning in, thank you for listening, either now or later. Actually, it must be later because we're just getting our first people are about to come in. So right off the bat here, Cal had a really interesting trip recently, and he's going to tell us about it regarding Change My View and some people who are interested about it. So go for it.
So about a month ago, I was invited to speak at an event in the Netherlands called Innovating Democracy, and that took place last Thursday. So it's my first time doing anything in person, representing the subreddit. I have obviously, as some people will know, been interviewed in the past by NPR and a couple of online sites, but yeah, it was a really great opportunity. I had to speak about Change My View for about 45 minutes to an hour, and basically I went in with the mindset of telling a story about why I made Change My View and how it progressed over time and some of the things it's achieved. But aside from my own presentation, it was just a really interesting day with some great speakers from all over the world doing their own little thing in regards to democracy and discussions.
And what was the name of that group again?
So it was called Innovating Democracy, and their website is innovatingdemocracy.io, and there's a section on the website that shows the program and you can see who is speaking, and it was formatted in a way that there was a keynote speaker in the morning, and then after that there was three parallel breakout sessions, they were called, and the crowd got to choose which one they wanted to go along to. And then after lunch there was another keynote, and then after that another three breakouts, and I was one of the afternoon breakouts.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Did you like? We'll start with like your presentation. What was the substance of it? What you spoke about?
Yeah, so I talked about how it came to be when I was in my last year of secondary school, and it was all about some reflective period I went through, and I realized that in general, the people around me all thought similarly, at least in compared to the whole world, and I kind of wondered what someone would actually do if they wanted to hear other perspectives, or maybe even want to change their mind on something. And basically, I talked about how I didn't necessarily set out to create Change My View. I was trying to find it, and I couldn't. There's not many places like Change My View, in my opinion, and so when I couldn't find it, I decided to make it. And then I talked about how our evolution of the rules and why each rule exists and how it evolved over time. And then I went into the benefits of the subreddit that have been recognized in the form of universities using CMV for assignments and research papers, which you can find in our wiki, that have set out to find what does and doesn't change people's views. But also because of the whole event was all about how we can improve democracy, etc. I think there's a lot of relevance in what Change My View is doing, and so I talked a bit about, particularly in the UK, I think our parliament isn't the most civil, and you can see in their live broadcasts of debates, they often act quite childishly, in my opinion, and I talked about that. And the funniest thing was that at the end, one of the people who asked me questions is an advisor for Westminster, and she's looking at reforming parliamentary debate, and she was very interested in Change My View, and has since followed up in an email. She wants me to send over all the stuff we've got going on and use it as some kind of inspiration for her, what she's setting out to do, which is really great.
There was something that happened maybe 4 or 6 months ago where we were someone had, for a second or a third time, contacted us about doing a study, like some proper academic study, and we went out and basically searched for Change My View among academic journal searches. And I think altogether, I was able to compile like 15 or 16 at the time. There may be more now. But for those listening, it's really not just been an off the wall random thing. That we've actually had over a dozen different proper universities do studies on one way or another, pulling data from or involved with Change My View. I mean, starting from that, you talked about those two initial things. One was you had a desire to want to change a view, and a lot of people don't know that that's how the subreddit started. Is that you had a view of the sort that you held it, but you weren't comfortable with it. Is that fair?
I've no,
we
I
go
don't.
Into this more two or something like a year ago, but
yeah, it's a bit complicated because it's not so much that I actually had a view to change. In fact, it's become quite foggy to me because this was about 5 years ago, and I never really thought to sit down and like memorize exactly my thought process. But I've done a lot of digging personally, and I realized it changed my view came from a place of frustration with my own echo chamber, in a sense. But not just that. There was some close examples to me that I felt they didn't receive discussions very well. If there was any disagreements, it was quite contentious, and all of this together with the fact that there was perhaps one or two things I would have liked to learn more about, to maybe change some perspective on. Certainly, all of that mixed together just created this kind of longing for something like Change My View.
As you know, you've done this speech and maybe more come. I think those two points, the one of you, the idea of one wanting to change a view they have, in a sense, seems counterintuitive, but right away you kind of get what it means. And combining that with the thing where you said you weren't looking to build it, you were looking for it. You thought obviously it would be out there anyways. It wasn't, so you had to make it. Like the combination of those, I think, are compelling for future. I don't know. When I just think of points of speaking and all that.
Yeah. Because because one of the things I realized at the start was that what do people like? I don't mean to. I'm not. There's no self-pity here or anything, but like if people don't have the opportunities to like discuss things in the way that we encourage at Change My View, what do they actually do? Because not everyone is fortunate enough to have people who would really be open to certain conversations or have disagreements. The people around you might all agree, they might dismiss you, they might not be interested at all, or you might not even know that many people. And so I just basically thought, like, surely there's somewhere online which achieves this thing. And there's probably a couple of other little places, maybe there's some Facebook group that does it or something. But I just had it in my mind that surely there's a subreddit. And then when there wasn't, I just had to make it,
Yeah. And when you were there, did they have a chance to answer questions?
Yeah, I got some really good questions. One from the parliamentary advisor who was what she was particularly interested in is whether there was actual like progress in the subreddit in terms of quality of discussions over the years with our additions of rules and changing rules. And my answer to that was yes, because as the rules that Change My View have been, kind of iterative experiment. We've changed and tweaked things as we see fit, and we've noticed that they improve the quality of discussion, and that's the reason we do it. None of our rules are there for the sake of it. So I also got a question which relates to what we're doing right now. Someone was interested in whether there was an approach to expanding Change My View and the ideas outside of the subreddit. And into like real conversations, which we're trying to do with the podcast, of course. But also, the day in general was interesting. To get away from my presentation for a minute, because first of all, in the morning there was a keynote speech from an independent journalist called Mike Hind, who was talking all about disinformation and fake social media accounts and all that kind of stuff. And I think what was interesting about my presentation is that throughout the day, I realized more and more that these previous speeches before mine were setting it up for Change My View really nicely, because they were talking about the problems in other online medias, and I think Change My View really does address some of these things.
See, okay, that's really interesting then. So you've got a professional academic symposium coming together of people who are pretty sophisticated in what they do in a country that's serious about democracy and trying to improve it. And what you've got are a lot of people talking about the problems, pointing out the problems, and so they actually kind of queued up. Here's some problems. Here's our questions, and you actually were able to show up with an answer, with something of a solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's what I felt like. Because obviously in the morning, just before arriving, I was like naturally a little bit a bit nervous, I guess. But as the day went on, I really felt like, yeah, Change My View really has a place in this whole discussion, and it really does bring some solutions to the table to address these points that the other people were talking about. And so that gave me a lot of confidence when it came to my own presentation in the afternoon. I get also. So obviously, I had to choose in the morning after that speech which presentation I would go to see, and there was three. So as I said, there was three at the same time, and I wanted to see them all. Everyone shared this thought on the day. Like, we really wanted to see everybody, because I don't know if you have the program up in front of you just now, but you can find it on the website and scroll to the very bottom.
Here, I can bring that up as the main screen here. Let me just do a screen share.
Mm-hmm.
And for you listening, apologies, but we're just doing a screen share here of the program for the 2017 symposium. It looks like it's still set to, excuse me, it's still set to like come register, even though it already happened. I guess they just haven't updated.
Yep. If you scroll to the very bottom, you'll see it, though, I think.
Right, so I'm going to the bottom now. We're scrolling down a conference schedule listing here. And okay, so yeah, so we see, okay, so timetable. Yeah, Mike Hind's got the keynote. And then, yeah, parallel breakouts.
Mm-hmm. And the three options in the morning were Michael Babiak, who was who led the online fundraising campaign for Donald Trump, and he's the one I went to see. And the reason I went to see him was, first of all, I was just interested because this is a huge thing, isn't it? But second of all, the one underneath him, Nicholas Diaz, who created an app for Colombian politics to connect people with their politicians. I went to dinner the night before with all of the speakers, and I was sat next to him, and I talked about his thing. So I felt like I didn't need to go to his, because I had heard quite a bit about it. And
yeah.
But yeah, the third option in that morning was Sandro Martin, who basically set up their own French political party, which I'm sure would have been very interesting as well.
Mm-hmm. So they just from scratch started a political party. Is it getting traction, or?
Yeah, well, I believe it. It started with 4 people and ended up 400,000 people or something like that. And yeah, like a great story, I'm sure, but I can't talk about it because I didn't hear, unfortunately. And then the afternoon began with another keynote speech by Adrian Massanari, assistant professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago, who also authored a book about Reddit, in fact, about learning from Reddit and navigating Reddit, which being before mine set the tone and gave people an idea of what Reddit was, because my presentation was very much changed my view and about the benefits of our subreddit. And because I have so much to talk about, I'm glad that the idea of Reddit was able to be covered before mine, so that I didn't have to spend too much time talking about what Reddit is.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting how much of the real estate here of time that they had to give out is one way or another tied together with Reddit. Of I mean, the people here, it sounds like they were quite clever in the way they set that up to do her and then you, so they were prepped.
Yeah.
But yeah, Reddit seems to be more and more relevant with each year that passes.
And then at the same time as my presentation, Michael Chesham, who he's part of a group called Momentum and helped run Jeremy Corbyn's second leadership campaign in the UK. And then also Maya Sakali, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but this was another one. I just can't talk about it. I didn't get to see either of these people, although I did get to speak to Michael Chesham at dinner, and yeah, it was just I was very pleased with the day. Learned a lot in the ones I saw, and had a really successful presentation myself. But it is a shame I didn't get to see everybody.
Well, do you mind if I read aloud the summary of what they gave you? Your discussion?
Yeah, sure.
Or your speech? So this is this second round of breakouts here. This one under Cal Turnbull. Cal set out to do the impossible, cordon off a space for measured civil discussion between people who believe in different things. Now there are over 450,000 members on Change My View subreddit. His presentation will detail the reasons he started Change My View, how it works, and what it has achieved. He hopes to demonstrate the benefits of such a forum and the lessons we can learn going forward in everyday life, education, and democracy. Professional stuff, man.
Yeah. So I think the response that might have worked. I think the response was of a successful presentation, if I can say so myself.
Cool. Do you know if there'll be video out?
It wasn't video recorded, though the audio was recorded. But yeah,
like it gets released, maybe it's something you can you'll let us know and we can put it somewhere in the show notes or whatever.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure if it's for their own note taking or whatever. I'm not sure, but
I got you. Yeah. Well, I guess if perhaps you covered sort of what had led to you creating it, but it also says here that you addressed what Change My View has achieved. And I know that we've grown a great deal and had some great milestones, but any other items you pointed to in what's been achieved so far?
Yeah, so I think a sort of unintended side effect of Change My View is that it provides a great archive of arguments and of successful view changes with the use of, first of all, our rules, which create a very controlled environment in regards to the quality of discussion, but also our Delta system allows researchers to scan through the subreddit and find instances of view change and analyze those view changes to see what was and wasn't successful. So a big part of my explaining what Change My View has achieved was essentially that it is a platform for research as well as for successful view changes. But I think personally, my favorite thing that it's achieved is it is what I was hoping for at the start. To me, it's a success story in the sense that I had an idea of something that was lacking. I tried to find it, couldn't find it, made it, and now I think it provides that service that I was looking for. So also the fact that it's been used in universities and colleges for assignments is a huge deal to me, because I've always thought that some of these ideas that change my view are lacking in our education systems. Obviously, I can't speak for your education system, but mine certainly. I was never really taught the best ways of discussing things with people and really trying to understand them and where they're coming from, and how to, maybe the Socratic method, or just critical thinking skills in a way just severely lacking
Yeah, like
in my.
teaching about finances and stuff like that, some life basics.
Yeah, that as well. So that's certainly lacking too. Although we're not really talking about that, I changed my view. But
Yeah,
um,
it's the type of topic that might not be a traditional academic
yeah,
area in
mhm.
schooling people, where most of them won't uh, be graduate students someday. It's worthwhile to have some of that well-rounded real life stuff, and the values and tenets that I tied to change my view are in a big way connected to what it takes to have good critical thinking and really understand people. Is that kind of?
Yeah, definitely, because I think like empathy and understanding and all that is just so important in going forward, and compromising and all these sorts of things. So I think to me, the fact that these universities have recognized it as a platform for these things is a huge positive, because it's something I've been hoping for. And I think more of it could come. So like part of what I was focusing on in the presentation was maybe taking some of these ideas and introducing them early on in education, and by the time they reach university, perhaps they would be better equipped to dealing with alternative perspectives.
Yeah.
Something that I think is lacking today, in my opinion. Um,
Very cool. Well, we're over a half hour in.
Yeah, so let's move on, I guess. But
But
yeah,
this
no,
is
it was just a great
fascinating.
experience to round that section off. It was really, I have to say, it was surpassed my expectations, and it was really great to be invited to another country and speak to these people. I was very pleased to have done it.
And if there's anyone out there listening whose parents think they're wasting time on Reddit, you can just be like, "Look, they're doing academic discussions. Look, see, this guy found a subreddit. Now he's just speaking at academic conferences. It's real. I don't know. I just think it's really cool that it's a real deal in some way. And I hope you got a lot more of those type of things in the future. That I think that'd be great for everything we're doing. So
Hope so too.
cool. Well, I guess I might jump to Meta Monday if you're ready.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
So Monday today, and you want to maybe let us know sort of how this developed and what it's about?
Recently, we decided that we need to reconnect with the community a little bit, and one idea was to have a Meta Monday post where we ask our regular users a question about their experience in the subreddit. Whether or not this is every Monday, or we'll take breaks now and then, is kind of unclear. But certainly on some Mondays we will make a meta post with a question. Depends how many questions we come up with, I guess. And of course we could start reusing them after a certain amount of time. But we've only done, so today was the third one, and it was all about asking people what delta were they most proud of, a delta that they were awarded. And we've received a few responses.
Mm-hmm. And so we've got a few. It's not blowing up or anything, but we've got a half a dozen or so responses in there. But were there any particular you thought were worth taking a look at just while we're here for the for the visually impaired, maybe to hear about kind of what's going on in there? Or?
Yeah, I'd say we should talk through them all. Cool. Sorry, another bit of admin. I literally just received a message from an OP, so I'm going to mute myself and reply. If you could perhaps talk through.
Yeah, I'm going to just take a look at that. So what we're going to do here is kind of look at what the responses were to this as far as deltas that some of our users have received. So I'm going to take a look at one here, and this is by user VVILLYD, VaviliD. And VaviliD says, I think mine is this one, and I'll tell you what's in the link, in which I demonstrate to someone asking a native-born citizen of a country whose parents are immigrants the question, where are you from? Implying they're not from the country they were born in. To do that is an inherently ostracizing question. The way I answered the question made them realize their own child is in the exact same situation I described, which helped them see the situation differently. So I'm going to take a look at their link and see kind of what they said, and if it's short enough, read it or try and get to the gist. So, we've got some responses to them saying, that that was really interesting, nicely done, and so this is user VVillyD. Okay, they're responding to a comment by the person who's the OP of the post. The post title is "Change How You Asking Someone Where You Originally From" is totally fine, not a racist thing to do. That's OP. OP says, continuing their original line of thinking that it is not racist. Okay, I might be doing a part of that, but I don't feel I have all ill intentions. As I wrote above, I live in Sweden, although not a native Swede. So if I meet if I meet someone called Hassan Ab Mustafa, a fictional name, even if they have been born in Sweden, I can't picture them running together with their Viking band of misfits. So yes, I will probably ask a follow-up question in the form of, was it your parents or grandparents that moved here and from where? Again, I don't feel that I'm a superior to this person. He's probably much more of a Swede than I am, since I've only been living here for 10 years. However, I can't stop myself from asking the person about their heritage. And this is VVLD's reply now, which earns Delta, which says, they quote him saying, even if they're born in Sweden, and they quote OP again, saying, but it's not an outsider status, it's just different. I think, oh, you're from Iran, that's cool. I don't know people from there. Can you tell me it's your country? Culture of food. And so now VVLD gets into it, and he says, the point is that the person is not from Iran. They are from Sweden. Their country is Sweden. Their culture and food is Swedish. Their parents may have been born somewhere else and raised in a different culture, and some of that may have rubbed off on the child, but that child is not Iranian. A person born and raised in a country, regardless of where their parents were born, is likely to feel a lot more connected to that person than the one in which their parents were born. The hypothetical Swede with the Iranian parents will have grown up speaking mostly Swedish, eating Swedish foods, attending Swedish school, etc. For someone to imply that they are not Swedish because they don't look like stereotypical Swedish person ostracizes them. They're clearly not Iranian because they weren't born there, didn't grow up there, and aren't used to the customs, tradition, etc. If they aren't really Swedish and they aren't Iranian, what are they? Where can they feel like they belong? Again, it's perfectly fine to ask someone where they're from, but if the answer is different than your perceived notions led you to believe it may be, insisting that the person must be from somewhere else is wrong. I don't necessarily think it is an example of racism, but it definitely separates the person and shows the questioner is defining them based on their appearance. And that's the end of the reply, which caused the delta, and OP, whose name is Dister GU, responded as such, delta, comma, because situation. My young one, although having two Greek parents, if asked, will reply that he is Swedish, born and raised in Sweden. He knows some stuff about Greek culture, he can speak the language, but if pressed to answer questions about Greece, he will be a really quote-unquote bad representative of the culture, and he will insist on being Swedish and thus not the best person to speak about Greece. So there you go. We had a delta given, a little bit of the magic there right here on our podcast from the typed out threads. All right, Cal, how did everything go?
Yeah, so I think I have someone coming on to talk about their deltas. However, what we should do is move on to the next topic just now, and we'll come back to it.
Right on. Okay, let me just open the rundown here. And next up was, well, I could go into the two big posts, or did you want to go into the that tiny but controversial post that we talked about?
Well, how about you start the big posts, and I'll continue replying just now. Okay, sorry to leave you on your own there.
But all right, so for those who are listening, we're going to switch on to what is usually the biggest segment of the show, which are looking at some of the biggest posts in Change My View from the past week. We are going to be conspicuously not addressing the biggest post from today, which is in regard to taxation being called theft and what that reflects on education. And we may be trying to get the OP for that on at a later date, so we're skipping that one. But there are two other big ones this week that I've set aside here to discuss. So let me just get the tabs and apologies for the time here. Just taking a second for my tab to load. And I'm just going to reload top. Okay, top from past week. All right, so the number one from last week, and this topic is Bitcoin's value is strictly backed by the idea that the, top post from the last week, 2,892 upvotes, change my view. Bitcoin's value is strictly backed by the idea that the next person will pay for it. Parentheses, greater pool theory on parentheses, comma, not because it is a finite and decentralized currency. Let me read that again. Bitcoin's value is strictly backed by the idea that the next person will pay for it, the greater pool theory, not because it is a finite and decentralized currency. So let's just dive right in and see what the action is like at the top level from this, one of the biggest posts of the week. And just to give proper credit for OPs, it was submitted 4 days ago by username You Lost Me There 43. You Lost Me There 43. And they say in their text part, hello Reddit, as the title states, I'm a firm believer that Bitcoin has no value other than the idea that the next person will pay for it. I myself invested quite a lot into Bitcoin and was successful in paying off all my student loans thanks to this. So I should be happy about Bitcoin's popularity. But as I see more and more friends investing, I'm worried they don't fully grasp what they're getting into. I invested with the thought in mind that my investment had no actual value, but would increase because people would think it had value. However, other investors I speak to seem to invest because they think Bitcoin itself has value, but I just don't see it. My worry is that this rumor-based investing is getting out of hand and will eventually result in greater economic consequences when the Bitcoin crashes, taking the savings of the many ignorant investors down with it. Reasons why I do not think it has value: 4 bullet points. Not widely accepted enough to use in day-to-day transactions. Parentheses, arguable. Number 2, fluctuation in value negates any use as currency. Number 3, liquidation can take 2 to 3 weeks. Number 4, defined as currency yet treated like an asset. So OP is nice and full of brevity. The number 1 comment and response, however, is not. So as I'm getting into this, I'm just looking at the top post from Taranaki. And what they're saying here basically is, let me just read, we'll get into it a little bit here and then see just the first couple of paragraphs of their response. This is the highest voted response. So, you know, ostensibly enough people from the Bitcoin community or supporters of it saw that, voted, agreed with it. Let's see. So Taranaki says, and this is the top voted post on the Bitcoin post, which was the biggest one of the last week. User Taranaki says, I understand where you're coming from, but my argument is that to some degree, the greater pool theory is irrelevant and not particularly uncommon event in the accepted stock markets of the world. Most stocks right now that you buy in companies off things like the New York Stock Exchange do not pay dividends, i.e. there are not quarterly or annual payouts of profits to stockholding investors. Furthermore, there is nothing necessarily linking stock value to profits. For instance, it is entirely possible that a company loses money, but its stock value still goes up anyway. This leads to a certain divorce from reality in some ways. The stock itself is worthless if you pay nothing. It pays you nothing beyond what a second person is willing to pay for whatever reason. So why the heck can we say Tesla's stock value can go up like this over the past year? That's a link to a graph, ostensibly, when during the same period they have posted losses of over 200 million in each quarter. Now you might say to me, it's because people think 10 years Tesla might be making large profits. Sure, except I would also say in such a scenario is that piece of now electronic paper that sits in your vault paying you any money with the company making them millions of profits versus millions in losses? The answer is no. It's still paying you $0 in dividends. In fact, its only value is that now other people will want to buy the stock and then sell it to someone else on the thought that they will expect someone else to want it for more money. Quarterly reports look good. Why? Because that's just what people are supposed to do. But implicitly, if someone declared tomorrow stock's going to no longer be traded, then you still have a worthless piece of paper in a profit or loss scenario because it doesn't pay dividends. Do you kind of get the shell game that goes on in real stocks now? It's the exact same speculation that goes on in Bitcoin. People want Bitcoin because they believe that other people will want it based on the thought it will keep going up. People want Tesla stock on the thought that other people will want it due to the thought that if earnings go up in the third person will want it even more, even though the increased earnings in a vacuum doesn't help or hurt the owner of the stock if he can't trade it to a third party. So I think what Taranaki is basically saying is, look, this whole thing of trusting it'll be worth something later. It's been going on since the beginning of time, and Bitcoin isn't particularly special in that sense. So just give you a little peek into the top level discussion of the highest voted post of the week about Bitcoin's value being strictly based on the idea that the next person will pay more for it. So back to you, Snorlax, just to check in.
So I'm interested what your personal opinion of it. Do you have one?
I think it's really clever. I think the blockchain that underlies it is the real innovation that'll, on later historical analysis, say what was the real gem here. Is that blockchain that allows it, but I think blockchain will allow a lot more than just these coins. I think integrating that from my point of view in operations work, the idea of the Internet of Things and being able to uniquely identify even the smallest of items in terms of inventory and sales and all that just opens so many doors. If you can basically use something in pulling from the blockchain philosophy and technology to you can't swap or fake or fraudulently do anything weird with inventory or stock or mailing or delivery if you've got those unbreakable marks in history that the blockchain creates. You can't go back. And I think it also has wider implications to a project I hint at times that I've been working on my own, but sort of very slowly in the background about some kind of automated fact-checking system. I've got a very old, very low-quality YouTube video explaining it. But the point being is that there are certain things you could establish as premises to facts that could be locked up. You could even do blockchain to protect and lock in like today's newspaper, so that we can go back and know that the libraries didn't fake the microfiche, or like to really have a historical record where primary sources are actually firmed up in a way in their digital storage that they can't be faked. And I think the ability to not fake stuff mathematically, even with a computer the size of the universe for 1 billion years, is helpful in a future where it's going to be able to fake all kinds of things. So I think, yes, Bitcoin's awesome. Blockchain is even more important. The end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry for the long one.
No, because my opinion of Bitcoin is far more like surface level. Mm. Like, I'm totally on board with some of the things it's trying to fix. It's trying to address certain issues, some of which perhaps aren't as big of an issue in Western countries, but there's some really big problems in the developing world financially, that some of which could potentially be solved by a cryptocurrency that is not controlled by a government. And also, like me coming from a completely non-economic background, I don't fully understand economic systems to the extent of many people, I'm sure, but I have like this slight issue that surely banks having a license to print money like essentially whenever they want is not a good thing. And how can someone's salary stay the same while banks are playing around with the total volume of currency in the country at that point?
You mean like reserve bank, like government banks?
Yeah, like how can there just seems to be like a real disconnect between what the people of a country are earning and spending and buying versus how the economy of that country and the bank like valuations of that currency. So I just, like, on a very simple level, I just really like the idea of a currency that you can't print whenever you want. You can't control it from a government point of view, which could lead to corruption and all sorts of things. I'm just on board with that idea, but at the same time, I have to hold my hands up and say that I don't fully understand how it works.
Yeah, it's it's a deep dive to try and get into that. I watched some summaries on YouTube 3 or 4 years ago that were fascinating, but I don't know if it's gotten more complicated or it's essentially the same. But there's definitely a lot of really cool thinking that went into it that comes from, I think, originally kind of a place of game theory and mathematics of this just raw. I'm not thinking of the right word, but this the firmament of like what mathy kind of stuff is built on. You can't break it. It's just let's build something that you can effed with. Like, anyways.
Yeah,
But
I know that there's also been a bit of a rift recently in the community.
oh yeah,
Like, I don't know if you've heard, all about like how you can fork the Bitcoin code and make your own version, essentially.
make a doji
And
or one of the others.
yeah, so there was a branch off from Bitcoin called Bitcoin Cash,
Uh-huh.
and essentially it was a group of the community who were trying to solve the problem that Bitcoin is currently facing of high transaction fees. I do think that there are solutions in the works though on the core, on the like the main Bitcoin branch at the moment. Uh, but that was really interesting to me because it kind of put me off knowing that there was this rift.
Right.
Like why can't they kind of get together and come up with a solution? Why do they have to split? But I don't think it's actually as simple as that. I'm not sure how equal the split was, or if it was a small group that had their own idea or not. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But they've taken the name.
So I'm starting this thing called Change My View Cash. I hope you don't mind. It's going to be like a side thing. But no, I wonder if there's something inevitable about if it gets big enough at some point, it will split. And does that mean, like Tesla wanting, or not Tesla, like Musk, talking about, getting on other planets so that we can reduce the variance of our survivability or whatever? Like, is it better for Bitcoin if there are splits so there's multiple places it lives? It doesn't have one point of failure, or is that already built in with the blockchain and it's cool and it's better to keep it unified? I don't know, but
Yeah, it's interesting.
time will definitely tell. It's going to be an interesting next few months in the financial currency markets.
Yes, yes.
Well, we're burning time pretty quick here.
Yeah, sure. And I'll just say that my attempts to find an OP, which
Yeah.
I was messaging throughout that previous section, have fallen through. Unfortunately, this is quite a tricky thing. It seems trying to arrange someone to come on with us on a live like version of the episode. Obviously, in the first 7 episodes or so, it was quite easy to schedule in advance. But we are trying to balance all of those problems. We want to have a regular episode, but we also want to get people on, and trying to schedule myself and Michael,
Yeah.
while also trying to get someone like off the cuff is quite hard. But we're persevering.
Yeah, we'll and my schedule has been unpredictable as of late, so I'm trying to get a little more normalized here on the schedule, but we'll just keep pushing towards it. And then
Yeah, and I am confident that this podcast will go in a direction of interacting with the community and getting people on, because to me it's kind of the whole point in a way.
yeah.
So we'll make that happen.
Cool. Well, I thought I might skip ahead past the big posts now.
Yep.
If you don't mind skipping the other one, and we can go right into this one post I found that was low voted but high controversial.
Mm-hmm. Could you screen share it?
Yeah, so I'll do that quickly. And so each week we try to find some lighthearted posts that might, maybe only have 80 or 100 upvotes, because the controversial ones on the heavy topics usually get higher rated. But if we can find someone, debating about grilled cheese versus, melts, or anything just fun, Pokemon versus Digimon, or that we'd like to include a little bit of that with each episode. So in my search for that, I found something that was actually, it's kind of I think a lesson for everyone listening. If you're a part of Change My View, we're hoping you can take something from this. The topic title is change my view. I am against net neutrality. Now, you've got an OP here making their point, holding a point of view that, as we know, is very unpopular on Reddit. The best thing that can happen in change my view for an unpopular view is that that gets a lot of attention and that an unpopular view is discussed, especially someone who's really in a minority on Reddit on a topic that's currently relevant. Because, you know, popping the hive mind bubble, whatever it be, is always good just to continue to test the ideas that we're testing. So I'll read the post. Change my view. I'm against net neutrality by Chillin' Dude 911. That's Chillin' Dude 911. And they say, in my mind, ISPs should not be categorized as common carriers. I am against net neutrality because it's an unnecessary governmental regulation which gives the SEC too much jurisdiction over internet traffic and hurts businesses by limiting them and giving them too many regulations to comply with, which will in turn cost the end consumer more money for internet service. None of the arguments in favor of net neutrality have spoken to me thus far. Excuse me, let me read that again. None of the arguments in favor of net neutrality have spoken to me thus far. For instance, ISPs can charge different rates for different sites, and so on and so forth. My opinion is basically written out in this video from Reason TV. There's a link to a video. There'll be a link to that. This whole post in our notes. I tend to side small government libertarian. Change my view. And the OP adds in edit, having good conversations. Y'all are great, but please follow Reddit. My opinion is unpopular, and some of the downvoting seems unnecessary. Now, this post is, from all intents, it seems that OP is reasonable within the scope of change my views rules and being polite. And it's got 0 upvotes, which means some of our members, some of you potentially listening, downvoted them. Please don't. if you're on change my view, the point here is to have the discussions. If you see a point of view you don't like, leave it alone. It's against the spirit of what we're doing. And I think this is an example of something we can learn from. Cal?
Yes, it's a big problem, in fact. Something we tried to address in the early days with the introduction of, you'll see it in the footnote of most posts, the saying "down votes don't change views." We tried to make that kind of almost like a catchphrase, you know, unofficially in the subreddit. Whether or not that caught on, I'm not sure, but the message is important, and that is that in these conversations, you want to change someone's opinion, really, and downvoting them isn't doing that. And the whole point of downvoting, you know, there's certainly cases where downvoting is necessary. However, in all of those cases, we essentially have a rule against those cases, like low effort or rude or hostile. And so, in fact, rather than downvoting these cases, you should report them so that we can remove them. And then, in theory, you're left with comments that aren't breaking our rules, and therefore the downvote button is not really appropriate, because then it becomes a case of you disagreeing with them, and Reddit itself states that downvotes aren't for disagreements. But also, there's a really interesting contradiction when it comes to the post itself, where I can never really be sure if someone is downvoting the post because they disagree with it or because they agree with it. Because if you disagree with it, downvoting it is making it less likely to be changed. So to me, that means if someone's downvoted a post, I'm going to assume that they agree with it and they don't want it changed. So they're trying to lower its visibility so that it doesn't get changed. But realistically, that's not the reason. And in fact, it most likely is because people disagree and they have a moment of forgetting the entire purpose of change my view. And so in a way, you should upvote the post you disagree with, because they're more likely to receive quality counter arguments.
And if you're looking for a place where opinions you don't like are not going to show up, find another subreddit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that's I want to thank the OP of that for having the courage to go up and post their view, and for keeping a good attitude there and giving us something to discuss, something that's important and
Yep. In fact, that it reminds me, like, that seeing heavily downvoted comments that are clearly just being downvoted because it's an unpopular opinion really frustrates me, because it's not the purpose. And we have a great example of it in our wiki. I wonder if maybe you could screen share it.
Which this is in the wiki. Let me get back to.
So basically, you'll find it by going to any post that has our footnote in it. So obviously, our submit a CMV post link is an auto-filled link, and it asks you to leave the footnote below the line. And so whenever someone does do that in the post, there is a link that says "downvotes don't change views." I wonder if you can find that, Michael. And if you click the link.
Yes. So this is a footnote from the CMV moderators. We'd like to remind you of a couple of things. Firstly, please read our rules. Read through our rules. If you see a comment that's broken, one is more effective to report than downvote it. Speaking of which, downvotes don't change views. Any questions or concerns, feel free to message us. All right, so I'm clicking the downvotes don't change views link, which see, I was trying to go right through the wiki itself, and this is much quicker than I should have thought of that.
Have you got a screen share there?
Yeah, I'm just going to let it load up here, and then switching to screen share in a couple of seconds here. For those listening on just audio, apologies, but we're just getting this set up for those curious to see. Okay,
but to me, this is just a great example of why you shouldn't downvote necessarily.
I'm going to present to everyone here, so it'll lock even when you have audio going. So go ahead.
Yep. So I think the introductory paragraph of this page is essentially what we've just been saying, where we're asking people not to use the downvote button and instead use the report button when it is necessary. But we ask you, whenever you disagree with a claim, try to refute it instead. So basically what we have done in this section is we've included a screenshot of an exchange between two people. In fact, it might be multiple people. I think you need to scroll up or down, Michael.
Let me get back to... It was hanging up.
That's the section there. And what it is we don't have the context of the post here, but the interchange goes like, what are the basic family values you're talking about? That's what someone asks. And then OP replies with the instinctive caring (brackets female mother) and breadwinning (brackets male father). This has been a family value for many centuries. And this comment received 12 downvotes, so it's at -12. Then someone replies to that with a great comment, very upvoted, and OP responds to this one saying that this is the best non-abrasive answer I've had in this thread, and I'm genuinely looking at my view in a different way than I ever had before. Thank you for your intelligent, well-put response. It makes a lot of sense to me and will help shape my viewpoint forward. And I believe a delta was given later on. But what you can see here is that the OP's comment is now highly upvoted. And so this is a clear example of where someone disagreed, they downvoted it, but then someone who had the foresight to know that downvotes don't change views instead replied with a constructive response to which the OP expressed a change of view. And this sums it all up for me, Wouldn't you agree, Michael?
It's really a great example. Do you know who found this one? This is a really good find, whoever was putting this together.
Yeah, I found it a few years ago, and it's always just stuck in my mind as an example of why you shouldn't downvote necessarily.
That's fantastic, because it goes from -12 up to 28, and you can just see that. Then if you see if you read the same whole thing, if you go online, listeners, it's actually quite beautiful, the discussion here. So Awesome.
The only
Well,
thing is there should have been a delta there, and I'm sure like there isn't a delta in the comment, but either we chased it up or it was manually awarded. But I'm sure the delta would have been given eventually.
totally. So for those listening, if you get your mind changed, do remember to put those deltas. Drink your Ovaltine. Okay, so looking at that, then we've kind of, if you're all right to move forward.
Yep. Yeah.
We had one other here, just of these highly controversial topics, and we have an OP posting that Firefly deserved to be canceled. In this case, downvoting is okay if you disagree for that one. All right. So we'll. I did have one quick fun post. We didn't really have a very rich set of examples for the fun posts this week, but I did find one. Let me just get the link up here real quick. And I'll do that real quick, and then I know you want to talk about the one of the speaker and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so now we have this is a fun one, 4 days ago by username Crassel. Username Crassel says, 13 upvotes, here we go. Change my view. The Grinch should face criminal charges. All right, I'll just read this out loud, and then we'll move on. We don't have to go deep into it, but this is just a very fun topic, so I'm just going to read this sight unseen here. If you're not familiar with How the Grinch Stole Christmas, let me summarize the movie version. Spoilers, everyone, spoilers. The Grinch is a sad, discolored reject who lives in an abandoned house on a hill and decides one night to break into everyone's house, steal their presents, and throw them off the cliff. Throw the presents off the cliff. He gets so far before he hears all of Whoville singing and decides that he wants to give the presents back instead of throwing them over the cliff. After he returns, he apologizes and everyone forgives him. He even gets to cut the ham for the entire town. In my opinion, he got off way too easy. He literally broke into everyone's homes and stole their property, which is burglary. It is the process of breaking into their homes. He incurred several dollars in property damage, from broken windows to holes in the floor, from sawing out a hole where the tree sat. I saw that's true. To broken chimneys. These are all petty crimes and mostly misdemeanors, but still crimes nonetheless, and he should be held liable for. My biggest point, however, is that he literally tied a rope from the mayor's bed to the police officer's motorcycle. In the morning, when the police officer noticed that all the presents were missing, he rode his motorcycle at full speed and unknowingly dragged the mayor's bed with him. The mayor's bed broke through the walls of his house, even more property damage, and was flying through the streets of the city with the mayor still in it. He could have killed the mayor, the police officer, and an instant bystander. I'm no legal expert, but the Grinch has to be charged with some form of negligence if he literally put people's lives at risk. Instead, he became beloved by the whole city simply because he was sorry. This is BS, and the Grinch should be facing criminal charges even if they're just misdemeanors. The post set up for all right, well, I think we did have a deeper one you wanted to see, Cal, right, on the it's the responsibility of the writer or the speaker.
Oh, I don't think we were going to cover that one, but
well, I can
maybe get them in for the next time.
All right, I'll save the link for next time.
Yeah, and we also have a post the OP of which I am determined to arrange to join us on our next episode, which should be this weekend coming. Yeah, apologies for missing an episode last week. Between myself and Michael, with me planning my presentation and Michael's busy schedule, we weren't able to make it, and we are a day late with this one. However, hopefully we will be back on the weekend kind of schedule next week, and we'll get that OP on. What do you say?
Yeah, and this being episode 12, maybe there's some way we can do some weird logical backflips and find a way to justify calling the next one 14 and skipping 13. No, we gotta have 14 for sure. Actually, we could find a cool topic for that one related to something superstitious. Well, we do have just a couple more moments here. Maybe just for fun, I'll read more Dr. Seuss, and then we can close out.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Top reply, and there is a delta awarded here, so this will be a great out. Okay, it's just a quick back and forth regarding the Grinch and being held up on legal charges. Space Unicorn Cadet, user Space Unicorn Cadet, 25 upvotes, responds to OP saying, "What legal system does Whoville have? It could be more restorative than retributional. Restorative justice seeks to repair the harm that has been done by acknowledging the impact on the victim, community, and offender, accepting responsibility for the wrongdoing, and repairing the harm that was caused. Wikipedia link is provided. The Grinch, by the end, has acknowledged the harm done and been forgiven by the victims. More punishment would be completely retributional and likely to re-Grinchify him. OP responds, I am not familiar with Whoville law. Regardless of the law, he deliberately caused property damage and put people's lives in danger. That has to be against some sort of law there. Space Unicorn Cadet replies, I mean, he says, why? I mean, it's not like you can prove their legal code doesn't have an all charges will be dropped if victim and relevant authorities agree clause. If the legal code is built to maximize happiness rather than money or revenge or whatever, then they have what they need. But the OP Crassel replies with a delta and says, in the spirit of Christmas, it makes sense that happiness is more important than possessions and monetary quantity. I also cannot prove their legal system, so it's not super absurd to assume that they have a legal system whose top priority is happiness. Peace on earth. That was just the top exchange on the fun post from this week. The Grinch.
I really love it when people take these more light-hearted posts seriously. It's really enjoyable. And in fact, one of our most popular posts of all time is in a similar vein, made by one of our moderators.
What's that? Oh, it was the Monty Python one?
Yeah.
You know what? I want to read the title of that, and then because it's too good. Okay, we're going to change my view. My top of all time. So while that's loading, I'll just say thanks everyone for listening. This is Michael Hatch from Thunder Studios in Long Beach. And Cal?
Yep. Yeah, thank you for listening, and thank you for sticking with us through our, our learning process of how to host and organize a podcast. But I hope you appreciate that we recognize the value in such a podcast and the potential, and we are learning. I mean, I've already invested in a set of accessories that has made my hopefully made my audio quality a bit better. I've now got a pop shield on my microphone and a stand, so we're learning slowly. Perhaps we need to work on muting those notifications.
Yeah, and user Jonta, we did see your deeply thought out comments yet again. Thank you for your feedback. We haven't had time to go into last week's feedback today. We're actually already over time, and my shift starts in 8 minutes, or what do we got here? 12 minutes. This page isn't loading. Ooh.
But there it is. That's it. Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government.
So for more posts like that, check out Reddit's Change My View subreddit. If you're listening, thank you for your time. If you have any feedback, thoughts, ideas for topics, for episodes, for titles, just please reply in the sticky posted thread at the top of Change My View about the podcast. And we will continue to try and find live OPs in future episodes who are active when we go live, and we'll try to give more notice from us. So if you want, you can actually coordinate your post with the time of the show, and you'll have a very high probability of getting on if you're active at the time, because right now we're 0 for a few attempts to find an OP in real time. But we're if you can help us out with that, or just you can even message us and say, I have one waiting. Let me know when you're going to go live, and then I'll post it. We're fine with that too. We'll work with you because we think that'd be a cool way to engage the audience. All right, before I sign off, last thoughts, Cal? Anything?
No, I've covered everything. And that's a very good point, actually. That would be a good idea if someone was willing to do that, because I've always thought it'd be cool to follow a post in real time. So, sure.
We'll check the show notes for links to things like Innovating Democracy and net neutrality and other topics. So, all right. Thanks, Cal.
Thank you. See you later.
Everyone.
Bye.